This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Manchester City comfortably win the derby at the Etihad. They were just better in all parts of the game that matter, i.e. attacking and defending. Haaland was excellent, Doku too. And there was one brilliant save from the diminutive Donnarumma on his debut. United, meanwhile, were okay at times and not at others. Ange Postecoglou begins his Nottingham Forest reign with defeat at the Emirates. No shame in that. Arsenal were very good. Eze and Madueke both brilliant. Long throws are back. Brentford equalising right at the end against Chelsea. Graham Potter's really Graham Pottering it up at West Ham. Spurs have a lovely afternoon in East London. Liverpool are the only team with a 100% record. A handball from Hannibal in injury time. #sad face. And then there's a goal for Woltemade on his debut. Another win for Bournemouth. An agonising last-minute own goal for Leeds. Also, the end of Ruben Sellers at Sheffield United. One step closer to the end for Russell Martin, you presume. Your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Galacticos are out. Barry Glendenning, hello.
Hi, Max.
Welcome, Jonathan Wilson.
Morning, how you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. And good morning to Lars Sivertsen.
Hello, Max.
Let's start the Etihad. Manchester City 3, Manchester United 0. Before we talk about the game, Barry, obviously this isn't a boxing podcast, but it was a very sad day for Manchester and for Manchester City because of the tragic death of Ricky Hatton. He was a massive City fan. City wrote, Hatton wore sky blue shorts and used Blue Moon as his walkout song throughout his career. 2008, he fulfilled another dream when he fought Juan Lascano at the Etihad Stadium. You were on air. I was off yesterday on the radio, but you were on air when the news broke, Beth.
Yeah, very sad news. Hatton, as you say, was a massive City fan. He was loved by everyone in Manchester. I think he had Wayne Rooney bring his belt out before one fight when he was Manchester United player, I think. And I would imagine there was a lot of sadness at the Etihad yesterday after the news of his death broke. And yeah, it's really, it's sad. I don't know what else to say.
No. And yeah, I interviewed him a few times, and was always incredibly, funny and interesting and nice, and those things are quite important. Yes, Wilson?
I was really surprised by how emotional Pep Guardiola was about it afterwards. And he said that he's been at City 10 years now, and he's been involved in a lot of commemorations of various people. But he said that he had met Ricky Hatton and had felt sort of great warmth towards him. And he said that he felt that was the most emotional he'd been in a footballing minute silence at City. And I think they kind of messed it up. And I don't understand how football does this when they've done this so often. But it wasn't clear when the minutes of applause were starting. So fans started it earlier than was intended. The players weren't sort of in position, so they sort of had to rush in. Anthony Taylor then I think had this sort of awkward decision. He was meant to start with the blow of his whistle, but then would people think that was the end? So he didn't do anything, which I think was probably the right thing. And it was very noticeable that although Ricky Hatton was a City fan, United fans were just as vociferous in their appreciation. So it was a very moving. It turned out to be about 90 seconds probably rather than a minute.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. To the game itself, it was pretty convincing last in the end for City, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I thought the first half was just kind of a bit scrappy from everyone involved. And I think this was a theme over the weekend that we might return to. I do wonder if these sort of weekends immediately after an international break are a little bit affected by, players only came back late in the week, and because I thought it was quite a few performances over the weekend where teams did not look at their best, and I thought the first half neither team looked very impressive. But City obviously went ahead. Erling Haaland back doing Erling Haaland things, and that first goal I think is kind of interesting because of all the stuff that wasn't going right for City last season. I thought one of it was that the sort of supporting cast in attack were not providing enough in terms of output. Doku to an extent, but especially Foden. I think they said on the commentary that was his first goal or assist in the last 11 appearances for City. I mean, please correct me if that's wrong, but Foden certainly has been going through a stretch of not having a great output, and it's been hurting City a little bit. So great assist by Doku and a good goal by Foden is a big boost for everyone involved. But what I thought was really interesting, and is maybe something Wilson's better positioned to speak about, was the way the second half went. Because City sat back. City sat back and were quite comfortable letting United have the ball in a way that we haven't seen a lot from Guardiola, but I feel like we've seen it more often recently. And I think there is a broader there seems to be a broader shift there of him fully embracing that having possession is not always the correct solution to every single situation. But they looked very comfortable, and I was kind of disappointed by United not challenging them more when they were kind of allowed to have the ball and given sort of challenge to go at City.
Is that right, Wilson? Is it sort of Pep, Guardi, Jose La, or Conte, or whatever?
I mean, Lars is clearly right. They clearly did sit back. They were quite happy to let United have the ball. United, apart from that Mbermo volley where Donnarumma makes a very good save, United really created very, very little. And this is part of the problem with United. And I've now done. There's only 2 United games. It feels like more than that. But I keep hearing United's. Journalists who cover United fans. Oh, actually, I thought they were all right. Because well, they were all right in parts, and I thought the first sort of basically before they went behind, their pressing was causing City problems. Rodri looked really surprisingly shaky. Bernardo Silva gave the ball away a couple of times, which is not normal. So you thought, maybe there is something there for them. And I was at the City game at Brighton as well, and the first half was quite similar to that, where it wasn't City as we remember them. It was quite scrappy. There were passes being misplaced. Reinders had a terrible first half, was pinging the ball out of play, seemingly every time he got it. But then United, there's just something not right there. They just don't, there's not a sharpness about them. So if you look at the first goal, all 11 United players are in their defensive third of the pitch. There's all the outfield players are in a sort of 15-yard band between the edge of the box and, 33 yards out, I guess, if it's 15 yards. You think, well, how do you concede in that position? Or if you are going to concede, it's got to be something unusual or special. And yet when Doku gets the ball, he's probably got 6 yards of space, 7 yards of space on all sides. And he's found this square, so he's facing away from goal, and to his right ahead of him is Ugarte, to his right behind him is Shaw, to his left behind him is Dorgu, to his left ahead of him is Diallo. And there's that square, and he's in the middle of it, and he's allowed to move to the top of the square, so furthest from the United goal, takes the pass. He's under no pressure as he turns. He then has, by this point, probably 7 or 8 yards of space to accelerate into. So suddenly he's accelerating at Luke Shaw on the edge of the box. Luke Shaw's static. And so they've created a situation a bit like a break, a bit like where you've had a player's really able to run at a defender. How has that happened? I mean, if it happens on a break, fair enough. How has it happened when you have 11 players behind the ball? That's just awful marking. And then Doku gets past him. Ugarte does get past to block the first cross. The second cross comes in, and there's Phil Foden in the box, also in yards and yards of space. I'm not sure Bayindir covers himself in glory. I think he's a bit flat-footed. It's a good header because there's not much pace on the cross, and he's guided it across goal. It's not a great header. I think a more alert keeper, or a keeper who's a bit more on his toes, would have got to it. So it just felt like a goal that United gave City. It was just incredibly sloppy, incredibly diffident. And then obviously they're chasing the game and they leave space behind them and kept giving the ball away. And so City end up having not just the 2 goals, but another 2 one-on-ones where they hit the post with one of them, and was it Reinders put the other shot just wide?
Yeah.
So it was 3-0 going on 5-0 without City really playing particularly well. They played okay. Ian, Doku, Foden, Haaland all had good games, and it was good to see Foden back. I mean, I think that's I think he scored a couple of goals in the Club World Cup. I think that was his first Premier League goal since January. But I do think that you can't take United seriously anymore. They're not a big team. They're not if you beat United, well, you should beat United. If you only count the 17 teams who've been in the Premier League the whole time that Amorim's been manager, United are 17th of the 17 if you draw up a table from when he took over, with 31 points from 31 games, which is an average of 1.00. I
did enjoy the square, the player within the square. We don't have time for every goal for you to say, well, when Zubimendi gets it, there's a hexagon of Forest players, and here they are. And also, it's worth saying, an accelerating Doku is definitely faster than a static Luke Shaw. What did you make of it all, Barry?
When we did our pre-season preview, I couldn't decide whether Amorim is this genius who needs more time, or is the monorail guy from the Simpsons promising stuff he's never going to deliver. And it seems to be a case now that United aren't good enough to trouble anyone, because, as Wilson said, City were decent yesterday, but they didn't have to do much to swat this United team aside. But they also don't seem to be quite bad enough for it to be obvious the manager needs to be relieved of his position. So they're occupying this middle ground of meh, where Amorim is allowed to keep bumbling along. He again insisted after the game yesterday that it's not his system that is the problem. And maybe it isn't, but what is a problem is he doesn't have players suited to play the system he wants to play. Bruno Fernandes was all over the place yesterday because he's in this withdrawn role that doesn't suit him. All three of the goals United conceded were very avoidable. We've heard about the first one. The second one, Lenny Euro was weak. Haaland was able to get the wrong side of Shaw to score. And then the third one was because of Harry Maguire giving the ball away, basically. So
hang on, sorry. To be fair, Harry Maguire, he's made an interception because he gave the ball away. I think it was Luke Shaw gives the ball away initially.
Well, it was basically Binder got them in trouble playing out from the back when he probably shouldn't have. But it was avoidable anyway. So there were three avoidable goals which United were not able to avoid. And City just didn't have to play particularly well to beat them very convincingly.
Yeah, I do want to also circle back to the first goal. Whilst Doku was busy in Jonathan Wilson's sort of square of destiny out wide, you see in the middle, it's Fernandes who's the closest man to Foden. And Foden is just kind of sauntering forward, and you can just see it doesn't occur to Bruno Fernandes to track that run into the box at all. Now, there were other players, like Wilson says, they had 11 men behind the ball. But it is a consequence of Bruno being used in that withdrawn central position that sometimes you got to track your man, sometimes you got to track your run into your own box, and it just doesn't seem to come natural to him because that's not what he does. And I don't necessarily want to pick on Bruno Fernandes. I think like last season, it's interesting. Last season, like he had really impressive stats for like chances created. He played the most key passes in the league. He had, it was one of those. Last season could have been one of the great sort of creative seasons for Bruno Fernandes if United had strikers who could shoot straight, but they don't. So he is still very good at what he does in attack, but he's being used in this role where there are more defensive responsibilities, and it doesn't come natural to him. It's not what he spent his career doing. And you can see on that goal, he doesn't follow Foden. Foden scores, and Bruno immediately turns around and shouts at the defenders around him, which is like, no, that was you. That you were the problem there. And that must drive you mad if you're one of his teammates as well.
Sure. I mean, I guess it's a point of is it his fault that he's been put in a position?
Yeah.
Or should you be good enough at tracking a run, whoever you are? I mean, interestingly, Haaland was defensively very good, Lars. It was a good day for the Haaland is good brigade, of which I believe you are part,
Yeah, but it's like, I've reached the point now with Erling Haaland that if he has a period where he's not playing quite at his best, or he has a game where he misses some chances, and people start asking questions, and people start making the points that, he's not as good as blah, blah, blah. I just can't be arsed to form a counter argument anymore because there's no point. You just wait until the next game. Like you don't. He's everyone who wants to criticize him and be negative about him for some reason. There's no point arguing against him. You can just shut up and wait for him to prove it on the pitch because he will every single time. He's always going to come back and score a ton of goals. He's always going to make whatever critics he has look stupid. It's just what he does, and it's completely inevitable. He does seem to particularly enjoy playing against Man United. He did say that when he was presented at City. They asked him which game he was looking forward to the most, and he did say the derby. Now, he's played 6 games in the Premier League against Manchester United for City and scored 8 goals. So clearly, those are games he quite enjoys. And you're right, he was completely on it. He was all over the place in terms of like defending. It wasn't one of those games when you look at Haaland's touch maps and there's like 4 touches in the opposing box and nothing else. Like he was putting in a huge shift, and yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, Arsenal 3, Nottingham Forest 0. Ange begins his reign at Forest with a 3-0 defeat. I mean, this was a tough game for Forest, and actually, Barry, Arsenal were very good, I thought.
Yeah, they were. It was a very straightforward win for them. I don't think we can lay the blame for this at Ange's door. He had one training session with his new players. But it was very impressive from Arsenal, and probably more so because they left several key players were either injured or on the bench, and they still got the job done with an absolute minimum of fuss. I suppose the only downside for them was the injury to Martin Odegaard. He did his shoulder again, and that can be a real tricky one to get right. He may end up having to have surgery, I'd say, because if he doesn't, it's just going to keep popping out. Nottingham Forest had a great game up against Morato, who was playing out of position at left back. I mean, again, this business of on loan players not being allowed to play against their parent clubs, I think is ridiculous. If that rule wasn't in place, Alexander Zinchenko could have played at left back and would probably have done a better job. But it could scarcely have been a more straightforward win for Arsenal, and it served to show their strength in depth, they didn't have last season.
Hopefully, I'm not the only one who's. That's how I've learned that Alexander Zinchenko's on loan at Nottingham Forest. The front three looked really exciting, Wilson, of Eze, Madueke, and Gyökeres.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I think Eze's second half particularly looked really good. There's a little bit of work to be done in that Eze likes to drift in field more than Martinelli does. I think that's probably actually a positive, but they just got to work out how to use that. So yeah, I mean, this was, again, it's a little bit like with City. It's a very impressive performance, but the opponents weren't great. But it is the sort of win that if you're going to win the league, you need to get probably 10 a dozen of in a season. And it's something Arsenal have struggled with slightly. They often seem to make a fuss over what should be quite regulation wins. Well, this was just very straightforward. They had loads of options. I think Gyökeres, because he's a little bit less refined, and it's the point Barney was making in his piece, because he's a little bit less refined than some of the others, that's actually good. That's the sort of grit that creates the oyster, creates the pearl even in the oyster. It doesn't create an oyster. The oyster's already there. It's a grit that creates the pearl in the oyster. That at the minute looks really useful for them, and the fact they could do it while leaving Declan Rice out and give him a bit of a break, I think is hugely positive for them.
Mourinho started ahead of Rice. Arteta said Mourinho was in a high emotional state after scoring 4 goals for Spain. I want to use that, and I was like, we don't want Arsenal getting too emotional with Wilson on a pod on Monday. It can only end in disaster. Now, the Zubamendi's first goal is a brilliant strike, Lars, but is it allowed to be brilliant if it gets a tiny deflection?
Yes.
Because it's so upsetting that gets a nick off it, because it does take away from the purity of the brilliance.
That had literally never occurred to me, but sure. I mean, of course, it's a good strike. It's not, does it really affect it? Do you think so?
Oh, massively. Like, I think if there's a tiny deflection on a strike, it instantly can't be goal of the month.
Okay.
I would say.
Completely. I mean, the strike is brilliant, whatever. The aesthetic quality of the goal is diminished by the deflection.
That's interesting that it never crossed your mind, Lars, but that's okay.
No. Well, I mean, there are many things that don't cross my mind. My mind is a very unusual place. I mean, we've got a lot to get through. I'm not going to start listing the things that haven't crossed my mind. Also, it would be hard to list the things that haven't crossed your mind because they haven't crossed my mind. So it's just philosophically very difficult.
I'm really sorry to have added something that now has crossed your mind. Before that was just beautifully, peacefully blank.
I'm going to be thinking of that all week. I mean, I won't be able to function.
No. I mean, it's sort of immediate. It's my first thought. That was my first thought of the whole game, is this beautiful strike has been ruined by a tiny deflection.
It's like Figo's goal against England in year 2000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which should have been a great goal, but isn't because it gets a little nick.
Agreed. Ange said you only have to look at how we performed last year. They're very disappointed. Obviously, I've got to understand that they're human beings, and a week ago their world was very different to what it is now. Whenever a manager's looking tanned and well rested, it means he's out of a job. So I'd rather not be looking so well and pale. Still, I mean, look, we discussed it last week, Barry. There's not a lot to add to this from Ange's perspective, is there?
No. He did stress that he was asked how long it would take for him to mould this Forest team in the way he wants them to play, and he announced it would be Wednesday. So
he did, yes.
no fannying about from Ange. We'll see what they're made of on Wednesday. I'm not sure who they're playing, but I'm looking forward to it.
I think that is that a Carabao Cup game or is it a European game? Swansea City away in the League Cup. So we'll find out. Anyway, that'll do for part 1. Part 2 will begin at Brentford. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. I just say thank you to everyone who came to the live show. Amazing that we filled that top tier. And we appreciate that you paid your hard-earned money and, on a day of a tube strike, managed to fill the whole place. So that is very kind. Or if you watched on the live stream, thank you as well. We had a lovely time. Brentford 2, Chelsea 2. We have mentioned long throws being back. Brentford are the best in the league at them. That is the 7th goal they've scored from long throws since the start of last season, 5 more than any other Premier League team. Keith Andrews said, I feel there's a little bit of snobbery in the game around scenarios like that. If the big boys do it, then it seemed to be accepted. And they had previously said that part of the reason for signing Coyote from Fiorentina was he had a long throw. Did they do that? Swing his arms back and forth on the medical.
I think the snobbery he speaks of might be more to do with the fact that Stoke kind of cornered the market in long throws under Tony Pulis and with Rory Delap, and there was a snobbery about Stoke. So I don't think it was about the long throws specifically, more Stoke and the way Arsene Wenger used to very publicly look down his nose at them and sniff about their robustness.
No, I think there is a snobbery. I think, being a Cambridge fan, right, it's all part of long ball football, right? I mean, I know it's a separate thing, but like the sort of get the ball in the mixer, there is definitely a snobbery about that within the game. And it seems, it's score a goal however way you can, but, there are the sort of purists who are like this, we want to play the beautiful game.
I think there's snobbery about hoofball in open play. That I'll get along with. If teams just whack it forward all the time to get it in the mixer, people probably don't love that.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that the set piece, the analysts, the set piece guy at Arsenal has got his own mural now. I mean, it doesn't get trendier than that. If you get an Arsenal mural, you've cracked it culturally. And I get the Tony Pulis Stoke thing, but I would take issue then with the word at the moment, because Tony Pulis left Stoke in 2013. This is not at the moment. This is a very long time ago. I think Keith Andrews is wrong. I think set pieces and long throws phenomenally trendy right now. They're all the rage. They'll be doing them in the clubs all over Dalston.
The BBC, long throws that led to goals have increased from 0.03% in 2020-21 to 0.38% in 24-25, which is a bit of a leap, isn't it? Are they harder to defend than corners, Wills?
I think they're different because the trajectory is slower and loopier. So I think the problem with them is that your corners tend to be whipped in. So if you get a head on it, it's going to clear the box. Even if it's glances off your head, it's going to clear the box on the far side. Whereas a loopy throw, it's quite hard to get the power to clear the box, or can be. I'm sure that people can adapt to it. It's just, trendy though it may be, it has not been trendy for long enough for defending against it to become of the level it is for defending corners. So yeah, I think that ball just sort of floating down in the 6-yard area in a crowded box when sort of grappling is now, although they're supposed to be cracking down on it, is way more pronounced than it was even 10 years ago. In the old days, keepers could just sort of clear people out of the way and claim that. They can't really do that now because people are much more prepared to sort of battle and fight for it. So yeah, I think it's the fact that there's the lack of pace on the ball makes it hard to get it out of the box.
Although Delap had a very sort of flat, trajectory, so that was hard to defend from that. And I guess it's hard to train, it's hard to practice defending them unless you have someone who has one, unless you have to bring in Steve Backley or someone into training.
You could presumably, I mean, it's less complicated than a bowling machine, right? You've got Merlin, which replicates various spin bowlers. You can surely replicate Coyote or Sharda. I mean, it seemed to me they had quite different trajectories. I think so. Coyote's was. Hang on, I can't remember which way around it was. One of them was flatter than the other.
This was a Sharda one, wasn't it?
It was a Sharda one they scored with. Yeah.
Sharda one that led to the goal. Yeah, and it led to that very good chance. I mean, it almost went straight in 10, 15 minutes before that, which obviously wouldn't be a goal. I mean, it wasn't entirely clear whether somebody at the near post had just got a slight touch, and then Sanchez has to sort of bat it away. Yeah,
Wilson, I wondered if there was if you knew the history of, I mean, sort of pre-Andy Legg, who is a decade older than Dave Challoner. So for me, sort of Andy Legg is the originator, but I just wonder if there was a Hungarian.
Well, even better than that, there was a Sunderland player.
Okay, of course.
So in the 1890s, Sunderland's captain, I think probably the greatest British footballer of all time, although he never gets the credit, a bloke called Hughie Wilson. And he pioneered long throws. But in those days, in fact, he was so good at taking long throws, they changed the law on how you had to take them. He would just lob it one-handed.
Oh, okay.
So he would lob it one-handed from inside his own half into the opposition box. And they said, all right, maybe we're going to make you have to have two hands on the ball. So until
Coyote... Did that end his career? Did that end his career? Or?
No, because he was an excellent centre-half. He was a really, really good player. Yeah, until Coyote forces a law change, I don't think you can say Coyote is fit to lace Huey Wilson's boots.
Well, interestingly, Rory Delap used to throw one-handed. So he would hold the ball with one hand and just rest the other on it. But all the power was generated by one hand. So it was ostensibly a one-handed throw.
In the Soccer AM glory years, we made some special towels for Rory Delap to dry the ball, and they were banned. They were banned by the Premier League. I mean, there was a football match as well as this long throw, which was quite an interesting game, I thought, Lars. I don't know do you think a draw was a fair result?
Chelsea had more possession and kind of had a number of shots, but it didn't feel like they had like massive chances in this game. I thought this was really like positive for Brentford, who I haven't always been super impressed with in every game they've played so far this season. I thought they looked more like the Brentford of old here. They were solid, and I guess Chelsea had to rotate a little bit with their squad and make some selection choices that we maybe weren't expecting, with people having travelled from international duty and this sort of thing, and they looked like they were not quite at it. But yeah. It's a bit of a sorry. That was a bit of a crap answer, but I didn't.
No, that's all right. No, it's just
I didn't have a very strong take on this game. If you want to get Wilson,
maybe it hadn't crossed your mind. I don't know, but
one of many things that haven't crossed my mind.
I mean, it is worth saying Jordan Henderson's. That's one of those passes he played that he can't do, so could never play for England. But it was a lovely ball for Schade, and actually both the Chelsea finishes, like the finish from Palmer, is so beautiful, and Caicedo's was a great strike, and it didn't take a nick off anyone, so it does qualify for goal of the month. West Ham 0, Spurs 3. This is very one-sided. I mean, Thomas Frank, we've sort of talked about his set-piece legacy already, but suddenly, Wilson, Spurs are very dangerous from corners.
Yes, and this is something Jack Pitt-Brook pointed out. He was at the game, he was obviously in the press conference when it happened, but Graham Potter saying, I thought we defended the first 9 corners quite well. He's very much in 1976. Nobody died.
That is funny. Yeah, I mean, I thought they were very... You talked about grappling, actually. You know, that disallowed goal, Wilson, from Romero, which obviously I'm biased, but you're just going, this law and this sort of clamp down on fouls in the box is so ridiculous because there are just so many of them. I don't think it's easy. I don't know what it is, but it feels like it's got worse since the clamp down at the start of the season.
Well, yeah, the problem is that its application is always going to be arbitrary. So you had in the Sunderland-Brentford game before the international break, Brentford were given a penalty for what I think probably was a foul from a corner. But then it was almost like Anthony Taylor felt better even that up because there's loads of grappling going on. So Sunderland got a slightly softer one, which again was probably a foul, but you get away with that 9 times out of 10. And here, the Romero one was by no means the worst example of it. I mean, Spurs should have had a penalty for something was way worse than that a few minutes later. So I guess to an extent, all laws are applied slightly arbitrarily. And, you know, you don't say just because we don't catch all murderers doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a law against killing. But this feels particularly arbitrary. And there is going to be an example where it really has a huge impact on a big game and everybody's going to get very upset and worked up about it. But I'm not really sure what the answer is.
No, but also, you know, pushing in the box is more important than murder, so we should take it more seriously.
The shove in question was originally by a West Ham player, Fernandez, and it sort of caused this domino effect, which led to Kyle Walker-Peters falling over. So, it shouldn't have been ruled out. I mean, it was a very easy win for Spurs. West Ham were comically bad. The opening goal, the Pape Sarr header, he was completely unmarked, didn't have to jump.
Didn't have to move, just stood there.
Just stood there. It hit his head. It was a bit like the Leeds, the own goal that Leeds scored. He just stood there, the ball hit his head and went in. Thomas Souček then getting sent off for that foul on Polino, thoroughly deserved red, I thought. And there was no way back for West Ham after that. They've now conceded 11 in 4 games, and they're a mess. Jared Bowen's the only bright spark you can see there. We all thought Lucas Paqueta would be a man reborn after having that gambling charge having been acquitted or found not proven. He's not playing well at all. And I was reading Jacob Steinberg's match report, and you could just feel the rage. He's very, you could tell it was written by a West Ham fan. He's so angry.
And the thing about West Ham and Potter that kind of would worry me for them is the nature of the goals they're conceding, right? So far the season, opening game, they lost 3-0 to Sunderland, 2 goals from crosses into the box. The 5-1 defeat to Chelsea, there were 3 corners and 1 cross, and here you've got 1 corner and 1 ball over the top. So in those 3 defeats, they've conceded 11 goals. 8 of them have been either just from set pieces or crosses put into the box. Now, the Premier League is a really difficult league now. The level is super high. Everyone's bought like super good and expensive players. I get that you can have a talent deficit in some games and you can just get beat. But if you're West Ham, you cannot be conceding like 8 goals from just balls flung into the box in 3 games. Like that should be possible to avoid. Like that feels like something you should be doing. And I'm kind of fascinated on the counter to that, how Thomas Frank have just immediately turned Spurs into the anti-Ange. Like it's completely opposite. Like we talked about how Amorim seems to be taking ages to put any kind of imprint on the United team. Like Spurs are not. This was not an amazing Spurs performance, I didn't think. Like, they're not passing the ball especially well. They're kind of relying on Lucas Bergwall to get them up the field by running past people. And the midfield isn't moving the ball forwards, I think, in a very impressive way at all. But they're really solid defensively, and they're really dangerous from these set pieces. And that will get you a lot of points in the Premier League. And it's just funny how that is just a complete reversal of what they were under Ange.
Yeah.
And it's happened so quickly.
Managers with more than 150 Premier League games, Graham Potter has the 6th lowest win percentage, which isn't very good, is it? Burnley 0, Liverpool 1. Then Liverpool top of the league, 4 wins from 4. AC Spinner. Has anyone ever looked sadder and as mournful as Hannibal did after conceding that last-minute penalty? Staring into the abyss vibes. I mean, I don't like the law, right? And people know that. And I think a penalty is too big a crime. But even I was like, because I heard about it before I saw it, I was like, I bet I'm going to hate it. And I was like, oh, actually, I think that probably is, guys. It probably is. And it feels like, what do you think it is, Wilson? Just lack of concentration? I mean, it's just they've defended so well and so sort of stoically for so long. And it would be such a massive point for Burnley. And it wasn't just his face. It was everybody. It was every Burnley player was basically Sami Kuffour at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that he's stupidly sort of half turned his back and stuck his arm out. It's even where his feet are. Like, if you're in that kind of, I know there's an optimum distance you should be from a player about to cross the ball, but if he'd taken one larger step forward, he wouldn't have been in the box. And would that position have been so much worse? I think it is just fatigue leading to a lapse of concentration. If you're looking at this from a Liverpool positive perspective, the fact that their 4 games in the league so far have been won with goals in the 88th minute, the 95th minute, the 82nd minute, and then the 95th minute, fourth minute. Maybe that is just they eventually wear opponents down rather than being incredibly lucky repeatedly. And I think there's probably an element of both. But yeah, it can only be fatigue. And Burnley played really well. That's pretty much as good as I think you can hope for from a promoted side against the champions. They might even have nicked it. I mean, they maybe were lucky to still have 11 men on the pitch.
Well, they didn't.
That's something that hasn't passed Wilson's mind.
Yeah, I saw it with the sound off at City. They were, of course, down to 10 men.
That's absolutely no. I'd be very disappointed if that edit is made.
but that can look like, if you're watching it without the sound, it can look like the exact same thing because you're just sitting in the low block anyway. Like you can take away one of the dudes and it will look like the exact same game.
That is very thoughtful podcasting of you, Lars, to come to Wilson's defense just then.
I'm a thoughtful podcaster.
I mean, if you're watching with the sound down, you still see the ref produce this quite conspicuous red rectangle from his pocket and show it to Ugachukwu.
I was probably getting my roast beef dinner at the time.
Yeah. Right? I say, Barry, that's less generous podcasting, but it's what we all wanted from you in that situation. Now, so the question, Barry, is, last season the question for so long was, have Liverpool played anyone good? Is this season's question, have Liverpool been any good? Does it matter? I can't work out how good they've been. Salah doesn't look like he's at it quite yet. This was different. They defensively didn't have a whole lot to do, I guess, and there have been questions about the defence in the last few games. But here they did struggle to break Burnley down.
They did struggle, and they got away with this one, I think. We're saying Salah isn't on it, but he's still scored 2 goals, I think, hasn't he? And Liverpool are winning these games without playing particularly well. They beat Arsenal without playing particularly well, and Arsenal are a good side. So I wouldn't be overly concerned yet. But, I mean, yeah, they definitely got away with this one. They were lucky in the end. I loved, in his post-match interview, Scott Parker said, we had to dig and go to places that not many human beings go. I was like, all right, Scott, wind it in a bit.
Yeah. Well, he also said, praising the team, he said they put their body where it needed to go. And I was thinking, well, for almost all the game they did that, but for one specific moment they really didn't, did they?
Do you not think that's Scott Parker really embracing life in the north? Like is this just the legacy of the mining industry and stuff like this? Like he's really getting into that. I would say about Liverpool that, because of the way reporting around transfer works and the way things are now, we just always say, they spent loads of money, they've had a great window. Like we always see this on social media, like transfer journalists going, great window for this club, they bought so many players. But the reality, even if you bring in like a lot of players, that does create a need for some time for things to bed in and some time for things to adjust, right? You've got 2 new fullbacks, and in the case of, today, this game, Szoboszlai, not a fullback, playing at fullback. You've got Wirtz, who's going to find his feet in the league, get used to his teammates. You've got a new striker who had to come off in this game. Like, there's a lot of things that are changed about this Liverpool team. They are a very different team than they are last year, and it's only logical that it'll take a little while in training and playing games for these guys to work each other out and to find the patterns and sort of get used to each other. So the fact that they can have these slightly iffy performances while this is happening and still have 4 wins out of 4, I take that as a very positive thing, and I'm expecting it to kind of gradually click better as the season goes on.
All right, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, 5 games to go. We'll rattle through all of them. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Bournemouth get another win, 3 wins in a row for them. They beat Brighton 2-1, their best ever start to a Premier League season. Alex Scott's got a beautiful goal in this. You've been a fan of his for a while, Barry. Am I making that up?
I think you are. I think this is the second time you've said this, and I'm not. I mean, he's a fine player, but I'm not. I haven't been banging the drum for
Okay.
Alex Scott. I'm more of who's the midfielder I'm such a fan of. I've forgotten his name. He's injured at the moment. He was playing right back for them last season most of the time.
Oh yes, Cook. Lewis Cook.
Yeah, Lewis Cook.
I know you're a Lewis.
Big
I know
Lewis
you're a
Cook
big Lewis
fan.
Cook fan. Well, maybe I've transferred it to Alex. Well, maybe if Alex Scott becomes, the man who lifts the World Cup for England in 2030. You can say, because I've said it. I've been talking about him for so long. Look, this game, I guess, Lars, could have gone either way, but this is a brilliant start for Bournemouth, especially given they didn't have a great window in terms of losing lots of players.
Yeah, was this the sort of battle between the two sort of foremost likable and inoffensive teams that we all think are very good and very nice and are run very well, and it's hard to get like too emotional about them in either direction. I thought it was interesting to see Bournemouth, and they did, in fairness, I should say, they did a really good analysis on this on Match of the Day, how direct Bournemouth were and how happy they were to play like quite long passes. And it's an interesting thing about Iraola. I remember I checked this out the piece Sid wrote about him when they hired him. There's a great quote from Iraola, and where he says, "I prefer too much chaos to too much organization." one of the ways that manifests, I think, is, of course, they set pressing traps and they're very good at catching teams, but they're also quite direct when they win the ball. And last season, actually, only Everton attempted more passes that were over 30 yards. Or only Everton attempted more long passes in the league than Bournemouth, which might surprise some people because, like, no one would accuse them of being a hoofball team, and they're not. But they're happy to be quite direct to follow that up. And I think you saw, certainly from the highlights, it looked like that was something that kind of did brighten a little bit in this game.
Yeah, and also any ball over 30 yards from Everton was probably not a pass last year, was it? Let's face it, it was just a kick, wasn't it? Well, I was thinking about this, Wilson, about the signing of Donnarumma and maybe overthinking it, which is a good thing to do with a Man City signing, about the fact that football, it goes in cycles, and perhaps it is getting more direct. Talk about Bournemouth being more direct, Thomas Frank changing Tottenham, that actually now maybe City won't play out from the back, or you just need a keeper. We're talking about long throws, who's a big oaf, who can just, punch stuff and kick stuff. Actually, that might be more important in what football is becoming in this, the return of the number 9 as well, all these kind of things.
Yeah, I don't like the word cyclical for tactics, because that implies that it's a predictable cycle. Winter, spring, summer, autumn is a cycle. Football repurposing old tactics, I think, is slightly different to that. Not least because every time you get an old tactic reapplied, you're reapplying it with the knowledge of everything that's gone since. So it is shaped by that. So I don't think it is cyclical, and I think it leads to sort of a sense of it being inevitable, which is not quite true. The fundamental point about football becoming more direct, I think, is true. Lars makes a point about these being nice inoffensive sides. I think that is how most people view them. But then Antoine Semenyo afterwards was saying, Iraola said we got to get stuck in a bit more at half time. There's 8 bookings in that game, just showing I do watch cards sometimes. Do you have any bookings that were in the Manchester derby?
Well, there was none for Man U, as Roy Keane made a great show of pointing out.
There's none for City.
None. Okay.
Big derby with not a single booking. I mean, it's that sort of. I don't think bookings are a great thing. I'm not saying that the greatest game of all time was that Portugal-Netherlands game with 16 yellow cards.
Wasn't far off being the greatest game of all time.
But it did suggest sort of the tepidness of the Manchester derby. And this was a game where there were challenges flying in. It feels this sort of... We've had sort of 15, 20 years of control of Pep ball. And in this sort of post-Pep ball world we appear to be moving into, football is becoming a little bit more direct, is becoming a bit more aggressive again, which is good in some ways and bad in others. But it does seem to be what's happening. And I think it's interesting that Iraola, who's come from that Spanish tradition, okay, not the Barcelona tradition, that he is such an early adopter and is so ready to go more direct, and apparently quite happy to have his side be a lot more aggressive.
I do feel compelled to mention Fabian Hürzeler's sideline attire, because he looked like something out of an autumn catalogue, and should have had an attractive blonde woman and a couple of red setters by his side.
And just leaves. Just there. Someone from the Brighton staff has to come out and just lay some autumnal coloured leaves just down there for him to waltz through. Newcastle 1, Wolves 0. David says, how much better do Newcastle look up front? Now they have seemingly have signed, going by the sound of his name, a dark wizard. I'm not sure that much better, but, Nicolas Woltemade scored his first goal. You've been saying he's not really a score big headers at the back post kind of guy, but he did quite a good impression of that. Or does he do that as well as being a very cute player?
I mean, he is very tall. And if you have a very tall man who is a vaguely competent footballer and you put a bunch of crosses into the box, he's going to stick his head on some of them. I don't have the numbers to hand. I can when next time Wilson is talking, I can look them up. But he didn't score a lot of headers last season. But it did occur to me earlier. Like I remember watching Aston Villa versus Newcastle, and I remember in that game Newcastle just completely nullified Villa's midfield. They couldn't open them up a lot, but they got into a lot of good crossing positions. But every time they wanted to put a cross into the box, it was like Gordon in there, so it was completely pointless. So whereas now you have a man who's about 3 meters tall in there, and that will immediately give you that option at least. But I think you also just saw a lot of nice touches from him in this box. I think. So my take on Woltemade, as you'll have heard, is that I just think the transfer fee is super high for a guy who hasn't done that much yet. But he does have a lot of fun ingredients. I think it's one of my favorite types of footballer in the world. It's just like a lanky player with a very good first touch. It's just aesthetically very pleasing. It's possibly because I'm not fully over my sort of footballing man crush on Dimitar Berbatov yet. It's giving me some of that sort of sensations. But I love seeing a tall man who can do these little nifty layoffs and things. It's great. And I just think also, you couldn't draw too many conclusions from this, maybe, but I think it's so important for a forward who comes to a new league with a big price tag to get the first goal early and to get a little bit of positive momentum. I think that side of it really, really matters.
High feet. You're saying he has a high ceiling, and he needs a high ceiling, of course, doesn't he? 16 goals in all competitions last season, 1 header. They're the statistics. Wolves have 0 points, which is not many points. They did dominate for the first 25 seconds of this game. And actually, they weren't terrible in this game, but on 0 point watch, it's just them and Sheffield United in the top 7 divisions of English football. I checked, and we'll get to Sheffield United in a second. Wolves play all the promoted sides between now and the end of October, Barry. It feels important.
Yeah, well, you need to get points on the board. I still think they don't look as bad as, say, West Ham, even though West Ham have a win under the belt. But they do need to start getting results. I think they've Leeds at home next. That's a big, big game. This was a very straightforward win for Newcastle, and I think Wolves maybe were lucky not to have a man sent off. Mosquera for clambering all over Harvey Barnes, and he was the last man. Yeah. And was it in the penalty area or just outside? I'm not sure, but that could have been a penalty or a red card or both. So they got away with one there. And then after the game, the manager, Vitor Pereira, was complaining about the refs' haste in booking his players, saying they were all booked for their first fouls or their first challenges. So, but I think they were lucky not to lose a man. So they were showing some leniency there. They were slaughtered by Man City, but apart from that, I don't remember them being particularly bad. So... No. It was quite interesting. On Match of the Day, Shay Given said he decided they'd be fine, and then second-guessed himself and said, have I gone too early there? What do you think? Chapper said, when you present this show, you're not allowed an opinion. Trust me.
Hey. It was a very good line, wasn't it? Newcastle play Barcelona at St James's Park on Thursday night, which will be a nice night for them, a bad night for the pod, but we'll reflect on it next Monday. Fulham beat Leeds 1-0. That own goal from Gabriel Goodmanson. I think you were a bit harsh on Pap Sarr earlier in the pod, Barry, when he said he just stood there. But Gabriel Goodmanson did just stand there. I thought maybe Joe Rodon ducked out the way. And that's me giving him a chance for this extraordinary header in injury time.
Yeah, well, it looked like 2 different Leeds players missed the header. And Goodmanson just genuinely wasn't expecting the ball to come anywhere near him. It did. And unfortunately, it cannoned off his head into the back of the net. He looked very disconsolate after. It's I suppose a competition. Who looked most sad this weekend, him or Hannibal? I'll give it to Hannibal, but it was a freakish goal. But I think Fulham probably deserved to win on the balance of play. Leeds, we said before the season, they look very light up front, and that is proven to be the case. It's difficult to see where their goals are going to come from.
We have said that before about a team for which Dominic Calvert-Lewin is spearheading the attack, doesn't he? He had a couple of chances. I thought Kevin looked quite exciting for Fulham.
And I'm thinking Dominic Calvert-Lewin is just maybe not the solution. He's not a bad footballer, but I looked this up now, he has underperformed his XG in 7 out of 8 seasons as a first team forward player, and the last 2 seasons have been particularly bad. Obviously, being the striker for Everton under Sean Dyche was not the easiest gig in showbiz, but last season he scored 3 goals off an XG of 6.7, and the season before that he scored 7 off an XG of 12.9. So you can simplify that into saying that over the last 2 seasons he scored about half the goals you'd expect from the chances that have fallen to him that he's worked. And that seems like not very good. And if you're Leeds and you're trying to stay up, that's not ideal.
Everton 0, Villa 0. I mean, we should be talking about an Everton victory here. They had 20 attempts. The stats said 2 on target, which is weird because Martinez made at least 3 very good saves. Did some good badge patting, pointing at the ground. Doesn't really work if you're playing away from home. But Villa are very lucky he's there. Villa, the only side in the top 6 divisions to not have scored a goal. The worst start to a Premier League season since 97-98. I didn't see that coming, Wilson.
I didn't think they'd be great this season, but I didn't think it'd be anything like this bad. But they just seem to have got themselves in a funk in that defeated Old Trafford on the final day last season, which cost them a Champions League place. And then they're sort of the whole everything around the club, which I don't know if it's fans and if it's coming from the club, is PSR's not fair. We're not allowed to spend all the money we've got. Look at the evil established clubs who generate far more revenue than us and can spend more money as a result. They've got a wages to turnover ratio of 92%. That's not sustainable. They've got to reduce it. And I think half a dozen of their recent signings have not been particularly effective. Although Philogene was very effective on whichever day it was he scored the hat trick. When was that? Saturday, having moved to Ipswich.
Friday night.
But the squad's better than the way they're playing. They just seem to have talked themselves into a slump.
Palace 0, Sunderland 0. First away point, Baz, for Sunderland. Your keeper, Robin Roofs, was very good. But 7 points from the first 4 games. You've got to be happy with that.
Absolutely. Delighted. I was hoping to go to this game, actually, but my ticket fell through. And then when I saw it was a 0-0 draw, and on Match of the Day, Leeds-Fulham was third last. And the commentator spent most of it talking about how terrible the game was. I'm going, how bad must the other Everton Villa and Sunderland Palace have been? But the highlights, at least, were okay. I think Sunderland were quite lucky. Their goalkeeper was man of the match. But, yeah, point away at Palace is a very good point.
Yeah, Glasner wanted a penalty. Uche got a shot away. There's a sort of unwritten law that if you get a shot away, you don't get a free kick. Because if he just touched that and then got kicked, he would get a penalty.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't have had any complaints if a penalty had been given for that.
Fair enough.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't. Elsewhere, Russell Martin, still no win in the league for Rangers. They lost 2-0 at home to Hearts. Lots and lots of boos. This seems untenable, Barry.
It does, yeah. I said before the season started, I thought Hearts might split Rangers and Celtic this season because of the Tony Bloom involvement, but I hadn't factored in how terrible Rangers would be. And Russell Martin wasn't a popular appointment. It's not going well for him, and he doesn't do himself any favours with his post-match interviews, and it's difficult to see how long more he can last. He is not the only problem there, let's just say.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it would cost a lot as well. I mean, to sack someone this early into a contract. Sheffield United have sacked Ruben Sellers. They've lost all 6 of their opening games of the season. Producer Joel says, put your sandwiches away, as Chris Wilder could come back. Could he? I don't know. But because George and Ali from Not the Top 20 talk very highly of Sellers, Wilson, and what he did, especially at Reading, in a very difficult circumstances. But this has not worked.
Yeah, I mean, kept his dignity taking Southampton down in an impossible situation. Did well at Reading in a very, very difficult situation. Kept Hull up in not easy conditions. So you sort of thought, yeah, he deserves a crack at a more positive job. And it's just been a disaster. You could see that opening game when they lost 4-1 at Bristol City. And they played all right for 20 minutes in that game. And a lot of the talk afterwards, that first 20 minutes, they pressed really well. Yeah, but they're massively open. Bristol City picked them off over and over again. And then the thing that was baffling in that game was he did the sort of Phil Brown style lecture on the pitch at the end of that game. And you think, I don't think that's a good idea at any point. That you shouldn't be slagging your players off in public. You do it in the dressing room. You're really risking your sort of the bond you need with the players, the sense that you've got their back if you're criticising them very publicly. To do that in your very first game just seemed extraordinary, and it's got worse since. And the game against Ipswich, it was not dissimilar. The first 15-20 minutes they were all right, and then as soon as they concede, they buckle, they get done on the break over and over again. I mean, Chris Wilder leaving after taking Sheffield United to third in the league and losing a playoff final by their head till the 78th minute. Was that purely for football reasons? I don't know. But if it were just for football reasons, that would seem extraordinarily harsh.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
But haven't Sheffield United embraced this new recruitment strategy that involves AI? And I heard it being discussed on some BBC show, and it didn't sound particularly Chris Wilder friendly. I mean, he has a reputation as a bit of a dinosaur that I don't think he deserves. But I think they were very much wanted to go in a new direction in terms of recruitment, and it clearly hasn't worked out.
No, because they've just signed robots. AI robots.
Yeah.
does not compute. Alex writes, Dear Football Weekly, I was delighted to hear your interview with the excellent Zoran Mamdani this week. I know we all suspected Barry to be Infantino's sleeper agent. Good to have our suspicions validated. He says, me and my dad have been listening to Football Weekly right from the start since 2006, when my dad used to download the episodes onto my iPod Shuffle. I've been listening to Barry for more than half my life. I've decided to embark on a political career simply with the aim of becoming sports minister, so you'll invite me onto Football Weekly. As a local councillor, I've sat through many, many meetings in pursuit of this goal, for me to now only realise that all I needed to do was run to be the mayor of New York. That's why I'm delighted to announce my campaign to be the next independent mayor of New York. I look forward to the invitation to discuss the critical issues to New Yorkians. All the best. See you when I'm sports minister. Councillor Alex Burnett, Penistone East councillor, weary Sheffield Wednesday fan. Well, listen, we extend the invite, of course, to all those who are actually running for mayor of New York. But yeah, people seem to like that slightly unexpected chat we had. And by all accounts, Barry, quite a lot of people at The Guardian have been trying to interview this man. You didn't have a clue who he was. They're still tipped up on this. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson.
Cheers, thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. Champions League is back, so we'll see you on Wednesday.
This is The Guardian.